For many centuries, the mysterious region of the world, vaguely described by Marco Polo, has been associated with the Great Silk Way. In the first half of the 19th century, Alexander Humboldt named this extensive part of the planet Central Asia. Different geographers treat this term differently. For example, under this term, the Encyclopedia Britannica refers to the territory of 5 post-Soviet Central Asian countries, previously divided into Central Asia and Kazakhstan. UNESCO's definition of the region includes Mongolia and certain geographical areas of China, India, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Russia. With such a broad interpretation, Central Asia's population exceeds 1 billion people. The life of such a huge number of people highly depends on mountains, giving birth to the region's rivers, in turn providing the livelihoods for these residing in river valleys and cities. The Central Asian Key Mountain Ecosystem Biodiversity Conservation Program, launched by several international environmental agencies, aims to mitigate the risks the mountains face in our troubled time. We are preserving biological diversity, which may sound somewhat complicated, but it is about preserving the mere life on our planet. We have only one planet, and in order to live on it well, in harmony with people, animals, and plants, we need to ensure balance. And it is for the sake of this balance that we're implementing our projects. We execute them in the countries and locations where biological diversity is most valuable. To preserve nature, you need to preserve all its small elements. The more diverse a system, the more species, more insects, vertebrates, and birds there are, the more resilient it is. We are in Almaty. The members of the international expedition gather near the hotel. The mission will help us better understand current environmental trends. We will spend the next week in the mountains getting acquainted with 2 target projects. At the altitude of 3,500 meters, 2 rivers, Kazan and Kairat, merge, forming the Koksu River. In summer, it is quite stormy and violent, twisting the trunks of huge Tian Shan spruces like chips. In the fall, the river submits its temper and its water level drops by 1 or even 2 meters. The streams flowing into the Koksu River are home to the semi-rechia salamander. It is a very rare water lizard found only in southeastern Kazakhstan and northwestern China. Its already limited habitat has been shrinking due to water level fluctuations and pollution. The most recent edition of Kazakhstan's Red List recommends establishing a specially protected area with a ban on livestock grazing and running, harvesting firewood and fishing in order to preserve this amphibian. The Red List outlines only the most general areas of rare species conservation. Yet, to implement the recommendations in real life, a complex system of scientific, administrative, and economic measures is required. We are in the Koksu River Valley and will spend the night at the Korinsky hunting farm camp, quite often used by researchers during their expedition and field missions, within the framework of a project to promote biodiversity conservation in the Jungarian ecological corridor. Eco-corridors are zones between specially protected natural areas where it is allowed to conduct economic activities, but they also require a soft conservation regime of nature management. In our case, we are talking about the state forest fund lands and farming acreage located between the Zhongar-Alatau National Park and Upper Koksu Reserve. The researchers' task is to design a pasture sustainable management plan as well as draw up a national action plan to preserve the Semirechye salamander. It's quite concerning to realize that 69% of vertebrate populations are at risk. That is, they have decreased by 69%. Freshwater ecosystems are doing the worst. The decline in the number of populations there is about 83%. And all this is happening because we, humans, are behaving unwisely and irresponsibly. Pollution, landscape fragmentation, improper infrastructure construction. It is absolutely possible to adjust and enhance all these activities. We just need to take into account the interests of both humans and the nature. Early in the morning, the expedition is leaving to the Koksu River upper streams. In its autumn outfit, the river is very picturesque. The tritons live at the altitude between 15 and 2,500 meters. In summer, the same elevation belt in the mountains is extensively used for cattle breeding. How does this affect the chemical water composition? Can vegetation degradation lead to reduced number of springs? The suspension bridge is the most reliable and flood-proof. The recent decades have added new questions, like what impact does climate change have on the salamander population?
Here in eastern Kazakhstan, we have seen a lot of good nature, but obviously there is an improvement that can be done, and the project that is implemented by local organization will engage with herders to improve, the capacity of herders to manage their environment in a sustainable way.
A new triton enemy has emerged: American mink. At the end of the last century, when multiple fur farms were closed, some animals escaped into the wild. The alien species had quickly adapted to local conditions. What share of the mink's diet does the salamander take, and what percentage of its mortality is due to mink?
We have a program here in the mountains of Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, where we make grants to conserve biodiversity. We are working with local organizations. The grants that we make are for local organizations to become better managers of their environment. We have made a grant to a group called the Association for the Conservation of Biodiversity of Kazakhstan to work in the Koksu area, this area in particular. Now, this area is beautiful, obviously, and in particular, the salamander you can only find here. So if we want to protect this beautiful place, we can also think about protecting that species. We're not just focused on the species. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that people live here and that people make their livelihoods from here. In particular, through livestock, through herding of cattle and sheep and goats and horses. The idea behind our program is to make a grant to an organization so that we can get two victories. Not only can we protect this place and the species that you find here, but that you can ensure that people here have better livelihoods, that there's more grass, cleaner water, happier cattle, and happier families.
The poetic metaphor that the entire world reflects in a drop of water is the essence of the ecosystem approach to the life on Earth. Landscapes, flora and fauna, and we humans, with our life needs, public institutions, and investment strategies, are a single organism, every element of which affects everything else. The question is how to assess the benefits or harm that our activities bring. When we see tall grass and many large mammals like morels, wild boars, roe deer, bears and snow leopards in the mountains, we understand that the ecosystem is doing fine. Yet, there are many factors that we cannot see with the naked eye of an outside observer. For example, what risks threaten the populations of small tritons hiding from us in this very stream?
For us, in a place like this, there's a couple of indicators of success. So instead you say, where do salamanders live? They live in the water. Is the water quality healthier today or tomorrow from today? So one way we measure success is by looking at biological indicators like water quality. The other thing we would look at is, from a biological perspective, is the grass. Do you have healthy grassland? Is there a diversity of species of grass? We measure that. Equally important, however, is, like I said, that this has to matter to people. We know that if there's more grass, that you should have healthier cattle, you should have more valuable cattle. We also measure that. So we want to know, are the people who are working here, living here, making a living from here, making more money tomorrow than they are today? That is also something that we measure.
The expedition moves 300 kilometers east. We are in the village of Kabanbai on the banks of the Jibek River. The village was named after a Kazakh commander who became famous during the national liberation struggle of the Kazakhs against the Jungar conquerors. The meeting of the participants of another environmental project has been scheduled in the village administration building. The representatives of the Jongar Alatau National Park, Talgat Hunter Association, and international environmental organizations will discuss the plan for developing local environmental tourism. We've organized 4 tourist routes and fitted them with gazebos, observation decks, sites for installing tents, and so on. The residents of the villages located in the national park's buffer zone, as well as the rangers of nearby hunting farms, will be able to rent out horses to tourists, offer them lodging and food, and work as guides. Ecotourism development is a huge national-level project. It has great prospects for us, since Alakol district is famous for its natural tourist resources. On our end, we can render comprehensive support to the projects aimed at creating additional jobs in our villages and improving the well-being of local people. The expedition is continuing. We are heading to one of the most gorgeous corners of southeastern Kazakhstan. The upper streams of the Tentek River are almost unaffected by economic activities. Morels, alpine ibexes, bears, wild boars and other local animals have been walking the paths that their ancestors had laid in the Upper Paleolithic. Such places beacon lovers of watching or photographing wild animals in natural environments like a magnet. Equestrian journeys through these areas untouched by the civilization can be hard, but if you still decide on such an adventure, unforgettable impressions are guaranteed. Tourists love the Atopkan Pass for its scenery. This house was built on the premises of the national park to serve as the recreational and tourist site under the agreement on joint activities between the Talgat Association and the national park. Tourists can spend the night at the guest house, rent horses and take an equestrian tour. If you hit the road at dawn and do not talk loudly on the way, you will get a chance to encounter an animal that will help you get a lot of likes in the social media. Like this handsome one, for instance. Or like this one.
All right, we are at Jangaria National Park at Tentek Lake, and the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund has formed a partnership with Talgat Hunting Association, where their idea is to encourage tourism to this place, primarily horseback tourism, backpacking, nature tourism, hiking, where Talgat has made a relationship with local people. And the idea is that local people will serve as the guides, serve as the horse guides to take visitors to see this beautiful place. This provides local people with an income as an alternative to illegal hunting or inappropriate or unsustainable use of this beautiful landscape.
In the fall, the water level in Tentek Lake drops, but next spring it fills up again. There is fish in the lake called the naked Osman, but we didn't plan to fish. It's very beautiful around. We will have a short tour now, hoping to meet some animals. Everyone seeing the abundance of wild animals in these places involuntarily asks him or herself the questions of what is the reason for it and can this experience be replicated in other areas. The answers are not as simple as it may sound. There are many wild ungulates here because the conditions in these hard-to-reach mountain pastures are good for them, and no one bothers the animals. But can we give up cattle breeding for the sake of wild fauna? Of course not. Yet, we can use mountain pastures more sustainably, not exceeding the permissible loads, not building new roads, and leaving some space for wild animals to live peacefully. We can also develop new sustainable types of economic activity like tourism. Of course, a short expedition cannot demonstrate all the sophisticated linkages among landscapes, wild animals and humans, but we hope that the conservation activities will contribute to our common and hopefully bright future.